Welcome to Talk to Al Jazeera. Up until a few months ago, Judge Richard Goldstone was renowned for his pursuit of international justice. His work in South Africa after the fall of apartheid is credited with helping the reconciliation process there. It was he and his team that uncovered the secret abuses of the regime. As the first chief prosecutor for the international tribunals on both Yugoslavia and Rwanda, it was partly up to him to set out the guidelines for the equitable application of international law. But now his reputation is being trashed from Washington to Tel Aviv. His chairing of an investigation into the war on Gaza has led to some very serious allegations about his impartiality, his naivete, even his attitude towards his Jewish faith and to the state of Israel itself. We've traveled to the United Nations in New York to find out if the war on Gaza has transformed Judge Richard Goldstone from a sober jurist into a man on a mission to discredit Israel on an international stage. Judge Richard Goldstone, welcome to Talk to Al Jazeera. President Shimon Peres is the latest to talk about the Goldstone report. He said, quote, "It's outrageous that a respected institution like the United Nations provides a platform to spread lies and stories about Israel." Very much the sort of message we've had from Israel about your report. What's your response?
Well, you know, I think people generally don't like to be accused of criminal activity, and so it didn't surprise me that there was criticism, even strong criticism, and it has come from both sides. But I do regret the extremes to which some of the criticism has gone, and the fact that it's been so personalised.
Yeah, that is interesting. It has been very personalised, and actually just in the last few days we've had sort of bastions of the liberal intelligentsia now weighing in. Harold Evans, the newspaper editor and the person who set up Human Rights Watch, you know, and they're calling it half-baked. They're being rather patronising to you. They say you've been duped by war criminals and so on. What do you feel when you hear all this stuff?
Well, obviously it saddens me that one of the founders of Human Rights Watch has adopted an attitude that a human rights organisation should only investigate closed societies and not violations of human rights or humanitarian law committed by democracies. I mean, that's not what I think people in the human rights movement understand.
But would you accept that Israel is having a disproportionate amount of attention being put on it, though?
Well, I suppose you know that's I suppose a sign of success. It wasn't the report certainly hasn't been ignored, and as I say, I suppose that's something that I think when one takes a step back, and I think with the passage of time, I hope it will be seen to be having served some useful purpose.
But amongst the other personal accusations are that, you know, you're doing this out of personal ambition, that you may one day want to be UN Secretary General. It was one thing I read, and that's why you want to get your name back in the limelight and so on.
Right. Well,
what do you say to
that's a ridiculous allegation. That really came out of a joke that appeared in The Guardian in London by a journalist who put it as a joke. And in fact, I remember calling him back and leaving, and he wasn't there. I left a message to say that Richard called. But you know, it was really at the level of a joke, and it's now been elevated to something that came out of the Johannesburg barn. But you know, that's a sort of personal attack that hasn't. This is not a first time for me. I had it in South Africa. You know, investigated violence there.
And they say that you didn't actually investigate crimes by the ANC, just by the apartheid.
No,
regime.
both. On both.
Right.
We looked at violence on all sides. And I was attacked vehemently by government supporters and by ANC supporters.
But I mean, again, another tag being used is, and this was by Harold Evans in the London Guardian or the Manchester Guardian, saying that the report itself is half-baked. And I suppose, I mean, it's a 600-page report, and if anything, actually, I would suggest it was rather distressingly annotated and backed up. Do you ever get the impression that no one's actually, or many of these detractors have actually read this report?
I've no doubt. Many of the critics, I would say the overwhelming majority of the critics, haven't read the report. And you know, what proves that, I think, is the level of criticism doesn't go to the substance of the report. There still haven't been responses to the really serious allegations that are made.
And it's interesting because, I mean, you do deal with many of the defences put up by spokespeople for the Israeli government, such as, look, we were under constant attack, we have a right to self-defence, Hamas used human shields, and so on. But you do deal with each one of these arguments in the report and acknowledge them and give arguments against them, but I've heard them from Israeli spokespeople being used again there. It's very strange, actually. I mean, can we put most of those arguments to rest now, though? And ultimately, this idea that the IDF uses the utmost care in its military operations. Doesn't your report finally put that idea to rest?
Well, I would have hoped so, and this is why it's really crying out for a proper investigation. I mean, ours was a fact-finding mission. It wasn't a criminal investigation. We didn't look into the criminal liability of a single person. That needs to be done on both sides.
But I mean, next time though, an Israeli spokesperson says, "We were under attack. No country can stand this. We have a right to self-defense." What would the response be based on the findings of your report?
Well, we didn't look at that at the justification for the military operations at all. We took them as a given. What we looked at wasn't what's known in technically as jus ad bellum, the right to use force. We looked at jus in bellum, the way force was actually used. So we didn't question.
But are they not connected? That seems to be the Israeli argument.
Absolutely not. The international humanitarian law deals with the way wars are fought, not whether they're just wars or unjust wars or legal wars or illegal wars. So we didn't question Israel's right of self-defense.
So where does that leave the Obama administration's response?
Well, you know, it seems to be still developing. It's been ambivalent, I think. The Obama administration joined our recommendation calling for full good faith investigations both in Israel and in Gaza, but said that the report was flawed. But I've yet to hear from the Obama administration what the flaws in the report that they've identified are. I mean, I'd be happy to respond to them if and when I know what they are.
I mean, on the morning that the report was released, the White House spokesman said they had concerns, but then admitted that he hadn't read the report.
Right.
Doesn't that concern you about this administration?
Well, it concerns me about generally about criticisms that have come, as you correctly suggest, from people who appear not to have read the report.
But when the Nobel Commission awards Barack Obama the Nobel Peace Prize for re-engaging with the international community and for a new way of doing business, or a reversion to a way of doing business, wasn't this one of the first tests?
Well, I think, you know, I interpreted that as being a sort of acclamation of a change from the Bush administration.
But no, I mean, the Commission, the Nobel Commission said that he was re-engaging with international bodies. I mean, if the UN Human Rights Council, and actually the US getting its seat back on the UN Human Rights Council has been seen as a sign that things have changed.
Have moved. Well, they have changed. I think that's unquestionably so.
But they've dismissed your report without reading it.
Well, I don't think they dismissed it. I think, as I say, they joined it to a certain extent and said there were some flaws which, as I've said, haven't been identified. But I don't think it's been dismissed.
But you're not concerned at all, then? That,
well, of course I'm concerned, and I'd like to engage with the Obama administration, and at least informally. I mean, my official job's over. The mission's completed its work, but I would like to know what the...
Has there been any interest in getting more information from you or any of the members of your of the mission to get more information as to how...
Not on any official basis.
I interviewed the Israeli ambassador to the US, and I asked him, was there any pressure at all to set up an independent inquiry and follow the recommendations of Goldstone? And he actually sort of shrugged his shoulders and said, none at all, absolutely none. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
I think that's changed to an extent. I read in this morning's news that the Israeli cabinet is split down the middle.
Right, Dan Meridor now suggesting that there should be. So but if the US ambassador said to me, absolutely no pressure whatsoever, so it doesn't even come up. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that not...
Well, that disappoints me, because I think the report, but also it's not only the report. There have been many requests from Israeli and Palestinian organizations, human rights organizations, for months, calling for open investigations into the...
But given the gravity of what you found in this report, though, I mean, can one just take the sort of well, you know, it's bad, but we'll give the Obama administration the benefit of the doubt. The report has found the systematic destruction of the civilian infrastructure, the systematic humiliation of the civilian population. The strategy was to transgress international humanitarian law. Doesn't that require immediate action?
Well, I would have thought so, but it's disappointing that it's that it's being
but just
put off and.
Well, Judge Goldstone, we're going to take a break, but we'll come back and look at some of the details inside the report in a few moments. We'll be right back.